The Puck Portfolio with Andy MacNeil.
Hey, welcome to the Puck Portfolio. My name is Andy MacNeil. I'm your host. I'm here on weekdays to provide NHL projections, betting advice, strategies, you name it, to help you make informed bets throughout the NHL season. A busy day in the NHL on Wednesday. Lots happening in the trade market. We've got a busy slate to talk about, but got some good line value on Wednesday's show. The Minnesota Wild at minus 125, great early price, and the Edmonton Oilers at minus 213, another great early price. So happy with that. I am going to add a bet on the St. Louis Blues at plus 155. I think you can find plus 150 pretty widely available, but shop around. You can find plus 155. Of course, this show is sponsored by NorthStar Bets. They offer odds on the next day's NHL games, which has helped us out a lot on this show. And stick around until the end of the show, because we're going to look ahead to Friday's 4-game slate. And I've got a little bit of a note on that I want to share, but we're going to get right into a conversation with my buddy Jeff from Canada Sports Betting right away. He has some thoughts on a recent move made by Brad Treliving and the Leafs. But first, let's get into some updated projections for today, Thursday, March 7th. I'm going to save most of my trade deadline thoughts until the dust settles tomorrow when we do our live stream at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be joined by the fellas from the Action Network's Line Change podcast, Michael Leboff, Nick Martin, and Tim Kalinowski. We will talk to them, like I said, at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time on the Canada Sports Betting YouTube channel to be doing a live stream, looking ahead to Saturday's odds, etc. But yeah, adding a bet on the Blues, like I said, plus 150 widely available. I like them at that price, but with plus 155 available at a number of sports books, I've got to lock it in there. A one-unit play. Some smaller edges that I haven't really decided on yet, but yeah, the Calgary Flames, of course, they just unloaded Noah Hannafin to the Vegas Golden Knights. And that's why I've got my Knights hat on today, because, you know, if you can't beat them, just join them. I'm a Knights fan now. Bandwagon. But anyways, yeah, the Tampa Bay Lightning, I feel like they're priced kind of short here. Minus 149 at NorthStar Bets right now. Relatively good price. We've got Pinnacle at minus 151, so a little bit shorter than them. Toronto, another small edge, as they are currently plus 116 at NorthStar Bets, but a lot of other sports books taking up plus 120, plus 125, even a plus 127 out there. I think that plus 127 range is where I'd be looking at to get involved, maybe a half unit play on the Leafs, who I believe have lost 6 straight versus the Bruins. Jeff probably knows better than that. Better than I do on that one. And another smaller edge, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Ottawa Senators. Like I said, just not sure what I'm going to do here with these, but I really do like the St. Louis Blues fading that new coach bump that the Devils have not got yet. They lost to the Panthers in their first game under Travis Green, and they're back in action tonight against St. Louis, who has dominated the Devils in this matchup. This has nothing to do with my bet. Just happened to see this after the fact, but it looks like New Jersey has only won 2 games in the last 18 versus St. Louis. So let's hope that continues tonight. I don't think the Blues should be this big of an underdog. Model has it minus 133 for the New Jersey Devils. You can get plus 150, plus 155. So lock that in there. But let's bring that guy in there. Maybe the most controversial guest I've ever had on the show. He really likes to fire people up. He's actually arguing with somebody on Twitter right now. Jeff, how you doing, man?
I'm fantastic. How about you?
Pretty good. So let's get to it. The Leafs making a deal, bringing in Joel Edmondson from the Washington Capitals. Just saw a note there on Twitter from Frank Saravalli talking about how, pretty good asset management from the Caps, because they just brought him in hoping that he could help them make the playoffs. Doesn't look like they're going to, so they send him off packing, get a couple of draft picks back from the Leafs. What do you think about this deal, Jeff?
I don't really understand it for them, to be honest with you. It seems like the team is focused a lot on adding defensive depth instead of, trying to upgrade the pieces that are actually meaningful to them, in the sense that, like, there's a lot of 5, 6, 7 in this group right now. The talk was that they needed maybe a 2. And should they not get that, maybe it's not necessarily worth doing too much. And here we are in the span of a week. They've traded 2/3, a sixth, and a seventh. They brought in Ilya Lyubushkin and now Joel Edmondson, both kind of box out type players. That kind of physical playoff style that can work, but same time, neither guy huge needle mover, and they've not had much success in their last couple of years. So we're gonna see where they fit into this lineup. But right now, it's kind of feeling like there's a bet on having some redundancy at the bottom and hoping that Meaner is the way.
So, of the players that are kind of available right now, maybe, rumored to be on the trade block, is there somebody that you would have liked to see Toronto bring in instead of a Joel Edmondson on their blue line?
I think instead is getting to be a tough question just because so much of the market has gone away. Like obviously when Chris Tanev was available, he was a name that a lot of people in Toronto wanted, local guy, free agent and not expected to get term in his extension. I think that part's very important. If you're going to sign the guy, it can't be somebody that you're putting a huge risk on long term. Obviously, that didn't work out. It seems Calgary's a little iffy on taking the Toronto offer if they don't have to, and they got one that they liked from Dallas. Sean Walker was another name that was out there that seemed intriguing for a bit. Another guy who can play a steady two-way game, has some mobility to him as well. 'Cause when you're a team like Toronto, you need that puck going up the other way too. It can't just be sit back and take in the pain, which is what's kind of making these last couple of moves a little odd. In terms of what's left, I mean, maybe you check in with
Walker,
Nashville and Alex
Walker would be a
Carrier.
nice piece for the future too. I really like that ad for
Eh,
Colorado.
yeah, exactly. He's not like a high enough pedigree that his upcoming raise is going to be gigantic either.
True.
But yeah, Alex Carrier is maybe the only name left on the D market that I would have been overly curious about. But even then, it would have been more in a passing sense. There's been talk around the city about bigger names like Colton Parayko's name, and I have no idea if that's just people trying to wish cast that into existence. I don't know how they necessarily make that work. But I think for me, I was at the point with the blue line where it was like, all right, there's enough of the filler at the bottom. There's not going to be a moving needle mover at the top. If you're going to keep looking, maybe look up front instead. Obviously, they felt differently, and the fact that there's some cap retention here means they might be able to still do something up front, but that remains to be seen.
I've given up trying to, figure out what teams can and can't do under the salary cap, and I just wait for it to
Oh,
happen
I
because I didn't
I can
see
tell.
I didn't see Vegas bringing in both. Yeah, I didn't see. I'm full, like I said, fully on the bandwagon, right? No, I didn't see Vegas getting both Mantha and Hannafin and making that work somehow, and they did seemingly without any trouble. Had the
Full credit to them.
Flyers willing to help them out. I mean, yeah, they're working within the rules, even if it does kind of make a farce out of everything. I think, they're well on their way to being the most hated franchise in the NHL because Jake and I were talking about this prior to you coming on, and just I mean, they went from the plucky underdog, basically. They were the Boston Red Sox for a short time,
Yeah,
the plucky underdog, and exactly like what happened to the Red Sox, they just ultimately turned into the thing that
yeah,
they hated the most, which was the New
yeah,
York Yankees. And the Vegas
exactly.
Golden Knights are the New York Yankees in 2024 in the NHL. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of disheartening to see this happening every year. Hopefully, it'll maybe get cleaned up a little bit. I don't really know what the solution is. I guess there probably is an easy solution out there. Um, Somebody smarter than me must have figured that out by now. But yeah, I just want to know, like, Toronto has been obviously surging quite a bit lately. They've been, playing pretty well on the surface. It can't be all roses though. So, what do you see that's maybe kind of like any glaring holes that are maybe being covered up by some of the other things that are going really well for the team right now? Is any big concerns outside of the blue line, I guess, that you have for this team heading into the playoffs?
I think if you look at games like the Boston game the other night, it shows you what a team that puts a really fast and heavy forecheck on them can do to them. Teams that are willing to be aggressive and not sit back and just kind of be in all of the top dogs. They tend to find that sort of success, and that's something that's burned them at times in the postseason as well. and is usually when like Boston or a Colorado barks back at them in the regular season, it comes from that style of play. As far as like long view kind of concerns, it's the same as pretty much every other year. The biggest issue for them in the playoffs in recent years has not been keeping the puck out of the net. They've actually been pretty good defensively in the playoffs the past few years. It's been whether or not their depth scoring can match the top guys and whether the top guys can truly catch fire. Last year, we saw Matthews go on a bit of a scoring streak to start that kind of dissipated. The last few years, Marner's struggled to produce in the playoffs. Nylander seems to always kind of be in the mix, but hasn't truly taken over. And then just nothing beneath them. We're starting to see the Bertuzzis, the Domi start to produce a little bit more now, but it's the question of whether or not that's going to last in April. And that's where you kind of sit and say, okay, well, if there's a forward option on the market that's worth splurging on, maybe that's where you take your swing. Like there was the talk, I think it was yesterday, I forget who put it out there, that the Blues would listen on Buchnevich doing 50% retention on him.
Yeah, I
That
heard
gets
that.
you him for, I think it's one more year after this at 2.9, and that's really good value. If you're a team, especially if you're a team like
There
Toronto
has to
that's
be
got
a host of teams looking for that deal, though, right? I mean,
Exactly,
like,
exactly. But that's one where you can start to say, okay, can we put some chips on the table here? Because for all the talk of Toronto not having chips, they have chips where it'd be tough decisions to make to let them go. But like you have a first round pick in play. You can look at somebody like Fraser Minton as a potential trade chip. He's one of their top prospects. Matthew Knies would be a tough conversation, but if you think this is a flags fly forever situation, you go for it. I'm kind of back and forth on whether this is one of those years, but if you think it is, and you think you're going to get an asset like that, that's when you go for it. Like that's one thing we can say with Vegas is, yeah, they kind of have all that LTAR BS with them, but at the same time, when they have that green light, they don't waver for a second. They
yeah,
go and make their move. If they see a guy on the market that they think makes them better, they'll do it. And then they'll go and draft a guy, and then they'll go and trade him again. They'll keep that circle again and again for forever. Yeah, they're probably never going to win the HF Board's Athletic Top Prospects tournament, but
that's
they're
okay.
going. But exactly, but what they might win is a Stanley Cup or two, and that's all that really matters to them. They're going to
Yeah.
stay competitive in the race by using their futures as perpetual assets.
I saw
Um,
somebody on Twitter say that the Vegas Golden Knights operate their hockey team as if an asteroid is hurling toward the earth and we're all going to be
Yeah, I
dead
saw that
tomorrow.
yesterday too. I forget who it was, but that was a really good tweet.
Yeah.
And but it's true. Like that's the urgency you got to have when you're in a competitive window. You don't know how long these guys are going to be these guys. I mean, they've had this situation of Mark Stone 2 years in a row now, two separate things. We can talk about
Bad
how
luck.
they stretch the
Very bad
return
luck.
dates, but there is still something there. Like his back isn't good. His
Totally. Yeah.
spleen, like his spleen injuries, lacerations are real thing. Like these are real things that these guys are dealing with, just because they know
You
how
don't
to
know how
creatively
long he
account them.
was playing injured either, right? Like he could have been
Right.
dealing with this for a lot longer than, and just trying to like bide his time until maybe it got to the point where, okay, like I've got to start sitting out and
Yeah,
whatever, right?
and what we don't talk about a lot with these LTIR situations is guys don't come back to the playoffs 100%. Like they're returning to the playoffs, yeah, but if it was still the regular season, even if it was the regular season with the cap off, they would not be coming back. What's your 100 in April is like your 40 in June. Like they're banged up. When Kucherov came back, he like those first couple of rounds, he was having a lot of trouble moving. We saw it with Draisaitl a couple years ago in the playoffs. That wasn't an LTIR situation, but you saw that the pace was not there, and he was basically playing on one ankle. Like these guys
Did
are
you see
banged up at the end of
Luongo's
the day.
tweet?
Oh, it was hilarious. I mean,
It won't
we'll
be
see if
game
he
one
gets some
though. It'll be
heat,
game
but
two, right? Or three.
yeah, exactly. Hey, give him credit for that because that's gutsy from someone who still works as an
Yeah,
executive
I was wondering, like, I
for an
mean, I guess
opponent.
he didn't direct it at anybody, and it's like, and you'd have
Yeah,
to be an idiot not to know what he was talking about, but at the same time, like, I don't think he can get in trouble for it. So,
yeah, he threaded the
yeah,
needle well.
for sure. Yeah, no. So, speaking of the Maple Leafs and their playoff chances, looks like their likely opponent might end up being the Boston Bruins, right? So, My model, the CSB projection model that is updated at canadasportsbetting.ca as of this morning, has the Toronto Maple Leafs with a 48% chance of making it to round two. The Boston Bruins with a 51% chance of making it to the second round. Leafs cup chances 5%. Florida's cup chances 15%. They've got the best cup odds by about 5%. The next best is the Edmonton Oilers at 10%. So, I think we watched the Florida Panthers and the Maple Leafs series last year, and a lot of people would say, okay, the Maple Leafs got goalied. And I think that's, a fair assessment. Bob played out of his mind. Florida really was, getting shelled at times. But, I do think there's something to be said about the fact that Florida did win in 5 games, and how they've been playing this season. I don't think you're going to see the same matchup if we do get a Toronto Florida rematch in the playoffs. I don't think you'll see Toronto dominate the way that they did in last year's first round. But I guess just on the surface, what do you think of this Panthers team? What do you think of the comparisons between them and the rest of the teams in the Eastern Conference? But I think with the addition of Tarasenko, I don't know if he's going to continue to stick where they've got him right now. He's playing with Barkov and Kachuk on the top line, and that's going to be pretty interesting to watch tonight. But I think with this addition, it helps them offensively for sure, not defensively, but they don't need any help defensively. They're a stacked team in that regard. So I think the Panthers right now are the best team in the NHL, even above the Edmonton Oilers. I think you can't discount the playoff experience, the defensive capabilities, and Florida's been so consistent all season long. So, I think the talk is that there isn't a clear Stanley Cup favorite, but I disagree. I think the Panthers are the clear Stanley Cup favorite right now.
I'm not sure if I would say that, but I'm also usually pretty weary on giving anyone the clear
Yeah.
favorite. I got lucky last year that I was pretty confident in the group of the group on your hat. Had them preseason and playoffs, and that worked out pretty well for me. But even then, it was like there's a few teams that are in this mix. Firstly, full credit to Florida today. Did you see? I'm not sure if you've seen the Forsling extension yet, but
Yeah, I saw
that's
that.
a really really nice bit of business for them. That's a good player, and to get him locked up for 8 years under $6 million, that
Speaking
speaks
of
to what they're
Speaking of
building.
Forsling, for that stretch of the first almost 2 months of the season, he was the only player that Florida had from their run to the Stanley Cup final last season on the blue line. And I don't think that's been talked about enough either. Like they did a really good job, over the summer, moves that I thought were bad moves. And transitioning into a team that I thought was going to be worse off, they've actually been better off this season. Not necessarily on offense, obviously, because they've kind of underperformed there, but defensively, man, just I think the most consistent team in the league. And yeah, Gustav Forsling, one of the big parts of that defense.
Yeah, they've been smart about things, and the guys that they brought in, yeah, they've had some trouble playing higher up in the lineups, but you put an Oliver Ekman-Larsson onto a third pair instead of playing him 26 minutes to justify his 8 million. You're suddenly in better shape with what you can do with them. Dmitry Kulikov, same kind of situation, manages minutes, specializes role, and he gives you a little bit of something. No, the group there's really solid. They've made some shrewd bets at the right times, whether it's those kind of depth signings or targeting guys like Carter Verhaeghe a little bit early, pouncing on big dogs when they come, like the Matthew Tkachuk deal. It's really it speaks to the effort they've put into building this team. I wasn't sure about what they beat at the start of this year either, but clearly whatever they found in that run is something that they've been able to carry with them, and there's obviously a lot of talent there too. Be it the Kachucks, Alex Barkov speaks for himself, most underrated player in the league 9 years in a row or whatever. But we all know what his talent truly is. Sam Reinhart's having an incredible year. Obviously, Tarasenko is going to add to that mix too. I think I would agree with you that they are the
They
team
got
to
guys
beat
like
in
Kevin,
the.
like Stenlund chipping in a lot more than you expect too, right? Like they've had pretty good depth scoring overall, I think. So
Yeah, and that's in large part because they treat their depth scoring as depth scoring. Like they treat those bottom lines as lines that can go and play a shift for you, and that's what kind of wins in this league now. One of the things, kind of going back to the Toronto thing, is they've shied away from that even in recent years, and they've tried to do the whole specialist defensive Swiss Army knife kind of thing, and it doesn't quite work. Like just coming at you in waves is what's worked for the Colorados, Vegases.
Yeah.
What will help Florida go on a nice little run here. It's just it's an impressive team, and it would not shock me to see them come out of the East again if they keep playing the way they are.
All right. I guess we will pretty much wrap it up there. Speaking of, you mentioned Fraser Minton, though. I did get to watch him in the only Oil Kings game I went to this season. He was playing with who's he playing with? The Blades, right?
Yeah, he's just
Saskatoon Blades.
Saskatoon this year.
Yeah, and I couldn't. And after a while, halfway through that game, I'm like, why is this guy playing in the WHL right now? He should be at least in the AHL because he looked like a man among boys out there. It's just a big difference. He totally stood out as the best player on the ice, the biggest, strongest player on the ice, all of that. So yeah, I mean, definitely probably somebody that teams would have interest in as a trade chip for sure. But yeah, any just thoughts heading into tonight's game about as far as cleaning up what happened in the last game? I think Jeremy Swayman played great in that game versus Toronto, but what can the Leafs clean up here tonight to make them a worthwhile bet on the money line?
Honestly, I'd be quiet on them today. Coming second half of back to back, they were sluggish yesterday. I think a lot of those guys are still fighting whatever bugs going around the room. We've seen a few guys in Toronto miss games with illness lately. David Camp just came back in. Not Matthew Kachuk. Jake
You
McCabe.
wish.
Yeah, exactly. Jake McCabe was out last game
Yeah.
with an illness, and then you looked at guys like Matthews and Marner, who they seem like a step behind. Obviously, they got the game winner in the end, but they weren't playing at their regular pace. I saw some people saying that it may have been Matthews' least impressive game of the year, and I wouldn't disagree with that. It shows you the inevitability of him that he still goes and gets you the overtime winner. But they didn't look themselves last night. They got lucky to pull out a very defensive win. Samsonov was great in it, but knowing they got to now travel into Boston and play a game on a back-to-back against a Bruins team who's probably a little bit eager themselves after losing to Edmonton in OT 2 nights ago. I wouldn't be playing a huge case for the Leafs tonight. It'd be one of those pleasant surprise things if it works. And there have been times this year where they've been that clear underdog and just flip the script. They had that 7-1 win against New York. I think it was in December or early January, where everyone thought they were going to be dead in the water, and they absolutely pulverized them. So these things happen. That's the way that this team and a lot of teams can be sometimes. It's the reason we watch hockey, is because you have that kind of unpredictability. But I don't know. I think you just gotta be aware that Boston will come out hard and fast again, and try to play a simple game and hope that it works out for you in this one. I would not be too ashamed if this is a loss as long as it's played respectively.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jeff. Appreciate you coming on the show today. We will do it again soon. Where can people follow you at on Twitter and whatnot?
You can follow me on Twitter at Jeff Veillette, V as in Victor, EILLETTE, and you can find my work over with Andy at CanadaSportsBetting.ca.
Awesome, buddy. I guess you got a Leafs Bruins preview coming up today.
It's already up.
Already up. Awesome. You're great, Jeff. Thanks a lot, man.
Cheers.
All right, great stuff from Jeff. You can check out his preview for the Boston Bruins and the Maple Leafs game coming up tonight. He's also got a coast to coast article up tonight detailing his thoughts on the NHL trade deadline so far from the perspective of the Canadian team. So check out both of his articles on CanadaSportsBetting.ca. You can check out my updated projections for the rest of the regular season, the Stanley Cup playoffs, etc. Strength of schedule updated as of earlier this week. But first, let's talk about Friday's 4-game slate. Not a whole lot to get to, but I did want to bring up the projections here, as we've got the Detroit Red Wings in action against the Arizona Coyotes, who will be on the second half of a back-to-back. The Minnesota Wild on the second half of a back-to-back versus the Colorado Avalanche, who added quite a bit at the deadline. The Dallas Stars, they're in Anaheim taking on the Ducks, who lost Troy Terry to injury against the Ottawa Senators. So that is something to look out for, as the Ducks are already missing quite a few pieces heading into Friday night. And then finally, we've got the Winnipeg Jets and the Seattle Kraken. But the games I want to zero in on, or the game that I want to zero in on, is the Detroit Red Wings. No current real edge at NorthStar Bets. They're opening odds for this one at -147, but I did see FanDuel open up at -120 for the Red Wings, which is quite a difference, obviously, from where I think the game should be. Of course, Dylan Larkin not going to be playing in this one. But the Red Wings against the Coyotes playing a pretty brutal stretch of games right now. And like I said, they're going to be tired. So I think if you can get around -120, I don't think if you can get around -120 on this Red Wings team, even without Dylan Larkin, against a Coyotes team who has been having a lot of trouble as of late, I think that's a pretty good bet. But full disclosure, not one that I've been able to make yet because sports books in my jurisdiction don't have generous odds like -120. So I'm a little bit stuck right now, but if I see that a little bit later, you can bet that I'll be locking it in myself. But that does it for today's episode of the Puck Portfolio. Hope you enjoyed it. Click like on the video if you haven't already. And of course, subscribe to the Canada Sports Betting YouTube channel if you have not already to get notified when we go live on Friday with the boys from the Action Network's Line Change podcast. We're going to be talking trades, looking ahead to Saturday's NHL games. You won't want to miss it. So tune in. See you then.